There we go. Okay, so this evening we have Alex Peach here from ServiceWire to talk with us. But right before we get started, I just want to remind everybody that we do have VITA tonight, and we have clients assigned to us. So there'll be some actual tax preparation happening tonight, which is exciting for us nerds. So if you can stick around, and we'll do that through this Zoom meeting right here. I will just do breakout rooms and we'll partner people up. That way you can shadow people, get more comfortable with the software, and we'll help kind of ease you into that process. So if you can, stick around for VITA. If you can't, don't worry, we understand. Life is very hectic for us college students, so we totally get it. Also, we still have the nursing home letters project going on. The deadline for that is April 1st. If you have any questions about it or need the details to that, let me know. Or you can also contact Katarina Kuhn. She is our VP of Communications, and she will be able to send you those requirements. And that is pretty much all the announcements I have for this meeting. So without further ado, Alex, you can take it away.
Perfect. Thanks, Ashley. I can't really see anybody, so this is kind of strange for me to do a presentation like this. I know with COVID, hopefully we're kind of seeing the light at the end of the tunnel, and maybe this fall or this time next year I'll be able to come visit you all in person. I've got some slides. I'm going to share my screen real quick. Can you all see that?
Yes.
Perfect. So like Ashley mentioned, my name is Alex Peach. I'm the controller here at ServiceWire Company. Just kind of an overview of what I plan on talking about today. I want to give you a little bit of a background and introduction on me. Hopefully I can give some context about kind of my perspective on my career, maybe give you all some ideas to potentially maybe ask me some questions at the end, because I've had three kind of subsections of my career that all are kind of wildly different, which could potentially, I don't know, maybe give you some ideas about if you're on the fence of how to maybe approach which way you want to go leaving college. After that, I'll kind of go over what ServiceWire Company does, the history, ServiceWire's a local success story in this area, go over some of the different industry basics about what we do and some of the accounting implications that can have on our business. Then give you an overview of what I do, who I report to, what I'm responsible for, things like that. And then a couple of things that are particular to our business and our industry. Cost accounting. I'm not sure how many people on the call have had that class yet, or if it was a course you enjoyed if you did have it, but it's for a manufacturer, it's extremely important, so I wanted to maybe give you a little bit of insight into that. ServiceWire also has, because of the industry and because of the business that we're in, there are some different unusual kind of complex areas that are on the CPA exam, but maybe aren't, especially in this area with some of the local businesses, you might not necessarily see. And then I've been in both public and private accounting, so I planned on just maybe going over some of the high-level differences between the two. So a little bit about me. I'm a proud Marshall alumni. I started in the fall of 05. Actually started as a computer science major. A lot of the people that I went to school with and graduated with actually started out in something different than accounting, so I don't know how many of you all can relate to that, but I had a accounting 215, and then the professor there was so engaging, and I kind of just took to the material so well. I had never had any kind of real experience with accounting before that, so I actually decided to switch that to my major. Something a little bit unusual for me is that I've got a twin brother, and we had a former co-student in high school. He was a couple years older than us, who had started a business here in Huntington and had come to us with an opportunity to help him expand that. So we opened that up in the fall of 2008. So I've got a perspective a little bit on entrepreneurship and opening and running your own business. Ended up graduating with my degree in accounting in 2010. We decided we were going to try to give a go at that business full time. So we did that for about a year. And then after that, after the full year, we decided that that probably wasn't going to be what we wanted to do, wasn't really going to be able to provide what we wanted with a college degree. So I started studying for the CPA exam that spring, was able to pass a few parts of it by the fall. And then in the fall recruitment for public accounting, I applied for some interviews and then was able to land a job at Hayflick CPAs, local firm there in Huntington. I had to get my full year of experience. I wasn't licensed until the next year in 2012. 2014, I joined the Huntington chapter of the West Virginia Society of CPAs, which was a great experience. In 2015, we decided that we didn't want to run that business anymore that we had opened it up while we were in school and just concentrate full time on my public accounting career. I worked at Hayflick for about 5 years, and then I decided that there was an opportunity with one of the companies, ServiceWire, obviously, that Hayflick had audited. They had an opening in their accounting department. I was able to get a job there. And then in 2018, I was actually promoted to my current position as controller. And that year, I was the president of the Huntington chapter. After that year, I rolled off of the Huntington chapter, so I'm no longer on that. But again, it was a great experience. A little bit about ServiceWire. We manufacture electrical wire and cable. I've actually got some, I don't know if you all can see me and the screen, but I've got a couple of different props here. We manufacture electrical wire that powers heavy commercial and industrial buildings. So the buildings on campus at Marshall, we make wire that would power that. We make wire that would power a plant like ours, so automotive, different heavy industrial power plants, things like that. So ServiceWire was founded about 50 years ago in 1968 by Art Weisberg. He founded it right there in Huntington, West Virginia. He also opened State Electric Supply Company. I don't know if anyone has any experience with them. Their headquarters is just right off campus on 20th Street. But in 1968, he opened up ServiceWire with just one customer, one product, and then little by little, his main focus is on State Electric, but over time, he would buy piece of equipment by piece of equipment and just build the company slowly over the years. In the early 80s, we expanded into Houston, Texas. Our current president got his start at the company and opened up a sales office and a warehouse there in Houston. In the early 80s, we moved out to Cologne, which is where I am right now, in our sales conference room. We bought a large property and built a state-of-the-art manufacturing plant and distribution warehouse. The third and last location that we currently have, we acquired a business in 1999, which gave us kind of a strategic location on the East Coast, there in Texas in the middle of the country, and then Phoenix out on the West Coast. 2021 is going to be actually a milestone year for ServiceWire as well. We're currently in the process of building a brand new facility in Houston. We're going to move from our current facility into this one in June or July, so it's really exciting. It also has got a bunch of different accounting implications, financing the building, so we had to negotiate with the bank to get the financing to build the building. All the accounting implications about capitalizing these costs. And then the planning, right? So we're going to expand. It's going to be a bigger facility. So trying to help operations, the people, the decision makers, saying which pieces of equipment should we buy, how much inventory should we allocate for the new facility, cash flow projections about how much cash will we need to do all of that. This is actually a picture that was taken back in December. This is our CFO. I think he came and spoke with you all last year, but he's another proud Marshall graduate. He's actually got a Marshall pullover right here, taken right outside the building. ServiceWire also has a pretty close ties with Marshall. I'm not sure if anyone recognizes this building right here, but the Weisberg family, Art Weisberg, is right here. This is actually at a ceremony, like a ribbon cutting ceremony, but they donated some money that helped build the science building or the engineering building across from 3rd Avenue there. It's named for the Weisberg family. I've got a video, hopefully I don't mess this whole thing up, but our marketing department put together a pretty cool video I think that will show. It's hard for me to really put this into these words justice about what we do and what kind of the plant looks like. So hopefully this will load. And I won't play the whole thing, but this will give you, I think, an idea of what our manufacturing plant, what our distribution warehouses look like. So this here is the distribution warehouse here in Cologne. This is a video of our manufacturing plant in Arizona.
Alex, I think something maybe off with your screen share because I'm only seeing your PowerPoint presentation. I'm not seeing a video.
Okay. Sorry about that. Let me see if I can. I guess that's not going to work. So a little bit about the industry that we're in. So like I mentioned before, we manufacture electrical wire and cable. The main raw material that makes that up is copper. Copper makes up about 80% of the finished product of our inventory. You can also use aluminum as a common electrical conductor, and that's a substitute, or that's one of our competitors in the electrical industry. So copper is a commodity. It's traded on an exchange. So the cost or the cost for us changes literally every day. Here's a graph that shows the last 5 years of COMEX prices. You can see right here is about this time last year, right after the pandemic hit. It kind of bottomed out a little bit above $2, about $2.10. Sitting in this seat about a year ago, I would have called you crazy if you would have said it would have been $4 in 12 months. You can see here just how fast it's recovered, and then even the run up on that is kind of unprecedented. It's a unique time to be in this industry to see this go up the way it has. And then they actually think that it might potentially go up even higher, maybe up closer to $5. So who does ServiceWire sell to? ServiceWire, we sell to wholesale and electrical distributors. So we don't sell to the end user. A contractor, an electrician would be the ones that would use the wire, would install it in a building. We don't sell to them directly. We sell to a business similar to State Electric, who sells electrical wire. They sell light bulbs, fixtures, things like that. They'll sell a bunch of different things to the contractor for a particular job. For large jobs, so one of the type of projects that we sell to a lot are Google data centers. They're building them all over the country. So if a job is over a certain threshold, like we're talking about maybe a few $1 million, we'll work with a distributor directly with an end user, with a contractor. And then what's our kind of competitive advantage? Just like what it's built in our name, service is our main competitive advantage. So a lot of our competitors will build in bulk. There won't be very much selection or with lead times. If you can buy it from them, but it's going to be maybe a 2 month. You're going to have to wait 2 months to get it. Our advantage is that we're able to, if someone calls us today, we've got high inventory levels, so we'll be able to maybe even ship it to them that day or the next day. And then finally, we've got our 3 different strategic locations. So pretty much wherever you are in the continental U.S., you can order from us and we can ship it to you within 1 to 2 days. So this darker brown collar, we can ship it to you that same day that you place the order. The lighter one will get there in 2 days. So we basically have 5 in our manufacturing plant. We have 5 different departments. The first one is, we call it the drawing department. So this right here is a load of 5/16 inch copper rod. So this is how the copper comes to us from our supplier. The first step, what we do is we run this through a machine that will actually thin out the copper rod. We'll thin it out and lengthen it to be a smaller circumference or smaller diameter, which we put in these large bobbins here. After that, we run it through a machine that will take those strands and then wrap them around each other to create an electrical conductor. So here's a picture of it actually going through the machine of the different strands being wrapped around each other and then coming out as one piece. So we sell 2 different types of this product. We can actually, after it goes through this stuff, we can sell it as a finished good. It could be either a solid conductor, or you can see there it's got the different strands that are wrapped around each other as a stranded conductor. The next step that it would go through would be the extrusion part. So a lot of times you can imagine as an electrician, you don't want to be handling bare copper, right? So we add a layer of insulation to it. This is probably the product that we sell the most of, just single conductor, bare copper with a layer of insulation on it. There are a few different types that we sell, but same similar concept. After that, we've got a cabling department. So certain machines or certain applications require that there's be multiple wires hooked up to a machine. To do that, we take individual single conductors and then we wrap them around each other to form a cable. So you can see here that this is actually being cabled here and then put on the reel this way. And then finally, we actually have a couple of departments, but if a customer wants a little bit extra protection, if this is going to be outside or if it could potentially be maybe run over by a machine because it's in a particular area, we offer to add basically an extra layer of armor. So we put a galvanized steel or aluminum armor on the top of it. So a little bit about my role as a controller. My boss is the CFO or the Chief Financial Officer. The duties, the way I presented them here, kind of 4 different buckets. So the first one is management. I'm responsible for maintaining our accounting system and the accounting policies. I manage all of the relationships for our outside functions. So we process our payroll, but we use a third party that will process it, will actually, we'll input bonuses, we'll input the pay rates, all of those things. But every week we'll submit it to our payroll processing company. They'll take the money out of our account. They'll issue all the direct deposits to our employees. They'll do the quarterly tax returns that we'll need to review. But I work with them, work with benefit administration companies, work with bankers, like I mentioned before, to finance pieces of equipment or the new building that we've got in Texas. just maintain different relationships that are outside of the company. And then finally, I supervise an accounting and a credit staff of about 8 people. Next section there, so that first bullet about maintaining the accounting system, those are all the different transaction cycles that I'm responsible for. So we've got an accounting software or an ERP system that we have. So it's my job to make sure that that's operating appropriately, that it's generating transactions that are accurate, that are rolled up into our financial statements the right way, and to have good internal controls to make sure that there's no fraud or embezzlement or anything like that. So invoicing, cash receipts, that's mainly our credit department, accounts payable, and then paying our vendors. Being a manufacturer, we invest heavily into fixed assets, so it's pretty important that we get all the costs associated with that correctly, and then we get it on the depreciation schedule for the right time period. Debt, like I mentioned before, to finance those pieces of equipment, a lot of times we'll use a bank to help finance that. Payroll and benefits, inventory costing. Something a little bit unique about our business is the pricing of it. So because COMEX can go up and down every day, a lot of our products, the price actually changes every day. So if the price of COMEX goes up 10 cents tomorrow, then the next day we'll be able to charge our customers more money for those products. And finally, we've got some marketable securities, which is a little bit unique, and then we've got some derivatives that we use to help mitigate different risks that we have. Then the final two kind of buckets, first one, reporting. So I'm sure everyone can probably have guessed that I'm responsible for assembling the financial statements, both for our internal users. So I send monthly financials to our CFO, to our president, and then quarterly we've got board meetings that I prepare financial statements for our board, and then external stakeholders, so banks, mainly banks. Every quarter I have to send our financial statements to the different banks that we've got debt with to make sure that we meet certain debt covenants. To do that, I'm responsible for closing the period out, which basically just means reconciling all of our accounts, and then for the income statement, doing certain provisions, so certain estimates on different expenses that we expect to hit during that year. Something that kind of makes private accounting different than public accounting that I'll touch on in a little bit is the operational reporting. So for that, it's not really GAAP, it's not debits and credits. It's trying to pull information out of our system that I can provide, or my team can help provide to our operations team to help them make better decisions. So one of the most important reports that we do there is a kind of a KPI report or a key performance indicator report. So we'll pull out, for us, it's extremely important that when we promise a shipment to a customer on a particular date, that we hit that. So we do reporting on on-time shipping, we do quality reporting, right? So we want, when we do ship product to our customer, we want to make sure that they're not going to have to send it back. And then efficiency metrics. So it takes X amount of time for a machine operator to run this particular machine. Are we hitting that standard? Or do we need to go out and do some retraining, or do we need to reevaluate what our standards really are? And then finally, we do budget and variance reporting. And then finally, the last bucket of duties that I have is just general compliance duties, right? So our bank requires us to get an annual financial statement, so I deal with our auditors. We've got a 401k plan that requires audits, and then different tax filings and other local, state, and federal government reporting. So one of the unique aspects of ServiceWire and what we do is that since we do manufacture electrical wire and cable, the costing of our inventory is extremely important. I didn't want to get too granular, but I wanted to maybe give you an idea of what costing maybe looks like at a particular business. So this is a screenshot of a work order cost report. So the top section here gives you all the information about that particular work order. This item number is the finished good that we're making. So XH is the type of insulation that's on the wire. That 10 right here means that's the gauge size, and then black is the color of the insulation. So this is just a piece of copper wire with a layer of black insulation on top. So this work order, the first part is all the material that goes into that. So our system, we've got a bill of material that's set up for that product. So when we go to make it, we know exactly how much it should take of these particular raw materials to make that product. And then we've got a section for labor and burden. So I don't know if you all remember this from your cost accounting class, that all the direct labor, so the person who's running that machine, we've got a labor rate in there. So if he or she puts so much time in, it's going to then assign that much cost to the final product. And then finally, we've got a burden rate here. So depreciation, rent, utilities, all of that, we evaluate it quarterly. And then we assign different rates to machines so that as we're running the machines, we'll allocate those costs to the finished good. So we've got our raw material, we add in the labor and the burden to get a total cost to make that order. We divide it by, there's a completed quantity up here, and that gives us a new unit cost for this particular product. One of the duties that our cost accountant does every day is he looks at all of the different work orders from the previous day, pulls them out, and then compares how much did it actually cost us to make that product versus what do we have as the standard in the system. So if there's if it's over 15% more than, if it costs us 15% more to make it than what we say the standard is, or maybe 15% less, he'll go in there and try to investigate and determine why that happened. Was it a mistake? Did someone process it incorrectly? Or is there an explanation that maybe we produced way more than what we usually produce? So if we usually produce 1,000 feet of this, but this particular order, we did 100,000 feet, we're going to be, the unit cost of that's going to be a lot lower. Some of the complex areas that we get into in our business, the biggest one, I think, for me at least, coming into it, is derivatives. So since the cost of copper can fluctuate so much, if we've got a lot of risk if we take on a large order that might ship in 6 months. We don't know what copper is going to be like in 6 months. It could be 50 cents more, but we promised this customer a particular price to sell it to them in 6 months. So what we'll do is we'll make the customer sign a contract with us saying that they will for sure buy it at this price in 6 months, and then we'll go to our bank and then we'll open up a hedge on that order so that they'll give us a price in 6 months. So the two will offset. If copper ends up going way up, then the bank will pay us money, and then our inventory costs more in 6 months than what we thought it was going to, or what we had the customer commit to. So those two transactions will offset, and we'll make offset the risk there. And then we also get into different derivatives for interest rates. So if we open up a new loan on a piece of equipment, the bank will in the contract will say our interest rate will be variable. So usually it's tied to LIBOR and then a particular markup on that. To offset any risk of interest rates going up, they'll go ahead and open a hedge to lock in a particular interest rate for the term of the loan. Another kind of complex or unusual area is foreign currency. So we actually sell a pretty decent amount of product to customers in Canada. To be able to do that, we needed to invoice them in Canadian dollars. So we opened up a bank account that accepts Canadian dollars, but to do that, we're exposed to different foreign exchange rate risk. If we sell an invoice, or if we sell product to a customer, they're not going to pay us for 30 days. There's a risk that the foreign exchange rate might move, and the amount that we had expected to get from them when it shipped is a lot less at the time of payment. And then finally, we've got some investments in different bonds and equities, which is a little bit unique and has its own accounting implications, or reconciling that can be fun. In the last section here, I've started off in public accounting. I'm currently in private. I thought I would just maybe give you a little overview of maybe some of the differences there. So the first section is the type of work that you do. So in public accounting, the main job is to analyze the system of your clients, to validate the amounts and the disclosures on their financial statements. And the perspective also is just on the audit department in public accounting. In private, the main responsibility is to record transactions that make up the financial statements, and then doing analysis to help the decision makers make better decisions. Second section there is the industry and the company exposure. So in public accounting, you could be exposed to multiple industries. I know at my time with Hayflick, I was involved with retail kind of companies, manufacturing companies like ServiceWire. I also did 401k audits. I did audits of governments, nonprofit organizations. So there's a lot of variety in the types of companies that you see. In private, you're obviously just involved in that one company, and then you're expected to be an expert in that particular business. Education qualifications. You don't need to be a CPA, obviously, to get into public accounting, but most firms require it to be promoted up to a certain level. In private accounting, you don't necessarily need to be a CPA, but it can definitely be an advantage. Travel, depending on the firm, it can range, right? Because you've got smaller public accounting firms all the way up to the big four. My cousin actually worked for EY out of Cincinnati, and he had a pretty significant travel schedule. He would travel sometimes to Florida and different states even. My time at Hayflick, I did travel a decent amount. I would say probably maybe 3 or 4 weeks out of the year, I'll be off-site, out of town in a hotel room. Private, usually very limited or no travel. That obviously can maybe vary a little bit based on the company that you're in. For example, here at ServiceWire, we've got those other 2 sites. I usually try to travel to Houston or to Phoenix once a quarter, pre-COVID. Hopefully I'll be able to do that soon. Work environment in public accounting, I think it's almost stereotypical about the audit long hours, about 50, 60, 70, 80 hours a week maybe. At my time at Hayflick, it was never really that bad. I think sometimes 50 to 60 hours, but I know like maybe the big four that can really, they can hold true. Private accounting is one of the reasons why I made the switch. Actually was more stable hours. So most of my staff only works 40 hours a week, maybe a little bit more at the end of the month or the beginning of the month, or at a quarter end or a year end for maybe like the audit, but usually pretty stable hours and regular hours. Communication, the biggest difference here is just who you're going to communicate with. So public accounting, you've got to be comfortable interviewing your clients. And then in private, I interact with different departments every day. So I'll interact with sales, with purchasing, with our manufacturing group, with distribution, and all of those were just different personalities that you've got to handle. And then the biggest, can you all see my screen? I think it might have just turned off.
I see your PowerPoint, and it's on like the first slide.
Okay, 1 second. For some reason, the TV turned off there. I was almost through with it too. But finally, the last thing I wanted to point out was in public accounting, one of the things I didn't like the most was having to track your hours. Literally every hour of every day needed to be tracked because that was the revenue source, right? Public accounting, they bill your time out. That's how they make their money. So to do that, you've got to be able to track all your hours. I've worked X amount of hours for this particular client on this particular task. In private accounting, I remember the first week I was in there, it was almost like a weight being lifted. Yeah, you still have a job to do, you still have deadlines to hit, but it's not as time intensive when you're you don't have to track your time, which was nice. So that's all I had for my presentation. If anyone has any questions, I'll be happy to answer those.
Hello.
Hello.
Yeah, I miss seeing you in person because the last 2 years you guys have gave really good gifts. You gave a really good pen one year.
Hopefully next year I'll be able to bring some back.
And you gave a bottle cap opener last year, I think. I probably used that a little too much, but yeah, I was going to ask, you talked about it a little bit, but do you find it like more fulfilling now that you're working outside of public accounting? And is there anything that you miss that you did experience while you were in public?
No, that's a good question. I think one of the things that pulled me to private accounting was the decision making, right? I actually helped influence the decisions at ServiceWire. Me and my team pull analysis to say, should we buy this particular machine or should we buy that particular machine? So I think that is a little bit more fulfilling. Public accounting, though, I really did enjoy it. I think the thing I liked most about public accounting was the variety, that there were basically different seasons of the year. So basically January through the middle of April, I mainly focused on clients that were for-profit, so companies like ServiceWire that manufacture, or maybe one of the retail companies. After that, it was some nonprofit governmental clients. In the summer, a lot of times are 401k audits. And then in the fall, we're usually maybe doing a little bit more of nonprofit work, and then kind of ramping up for the upcoming audit season. So I think that public accounting, the variety, and being able to see it going out on a client site, maybe a little bit more exciting, not necessarily the same kind of task every month or every quarter or whatever. So I'm not sure if that answers your question or.
Oh, no, it definitely did. Thank you. But I had just one more, if you don't mind.
Yeah,
sure. So now it sounds like a lot of your job now is kind of just conversing with people and managing people, conversations. You still do a lot of technical work. What's like the balance, opposed to technical and just kind of managing?
No, that's a great question. I think, as I've developed here at ServiceWire, I think when I first got hired on, I was the accounting manager. So I was a little bit more close to the transactions. currently in my controller position, there are a lot of different meetings, and then it's mainly me communicating to my staff and, all right, are these particular things, these particular tasks been finished, and then reviewing their work for kind of quality assurance before it goes out. I would say, I mean, I still prepare the financial statements. We're a fairly large company, but maybe not like that you would think like of a publicly traded company. So if someone's out on vacation, a lot of times I'll fill in for a particular task. So I still do some technical work, but yeah, I think mainly like especially the last year or so, it's a lot of just supervision, interacting with outside parties, and then doing different meetings, and things like that.
Well, that's really interesting. Thank you.
I had a question, sort of based on where you started your presentation on your, sorry, I think I had water running, coming out of college, and you said you went into business with your brother for about a year, but then decided that wasn't something you wanted to do. What were some of the things that influenced your decision and made you come to that conclusion that that wasn't something you wanted to do?
That's a great question. I think I enjoyed the work. I think it was fun. It was exciting to be able to open up your own business. For us specifically at that point in my life, I didn't really have much experience other than going to class, right? And I think you'll find that learning about it in a textbook and then actually going out and doing it can be pretty different. So I enjoy doing it, but I think the particular circumstances there, we had a lot of competition come in, so it was extremely competitive. We weren't really making that much money because of that. There was some compliance type things that were some legal or governmental regulations that were making it hard. So basically what it was, we opened up a tanning salon. We opened it up on 4th Avenue, about a block away from Marshall. At that time, we opened it up about 6 weeks before Obamacare was passed. They ended up adding an extra 10% tax on our services. When we opened the business, we didn't really have any competitors within driving distance of Marshall, so we thought we were actually making it pretty good. I mean, pretty easy or not much risk there. Within 6 months, we had 2 major competitors come in that were not just little mom and pop shops. They were actual franchises that had better resources than what we did. And I think we were making decent money, but the amount of hours that we had to work were just way too much. So we were doing the administrative work, so payroll, purchasing, things like that, but we were also trying to work shifts to not have to pay other people. And at that point, I think it was just a little bit overwhelming. And then hearing some of our former classmates who had maybe went into public accounting or gotten a full-time job and seeing what their salaries were, that you don't have any of the stress or any of the risk, but you got a particular amount of money. I think that was pretty intriguing at that point.
Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome.
Is there a way we can get a copy of your slideshow? You had a lot of great information. I'd like to see what you had written down since the slideshow didn't go through.
Sure. Yeah, I guess I can email it to Ashlee. And Ashlee can send it out?
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you so much. The cost accounting is one of the things that I'm looking at going into, and I'd really like the information.
Okay, sure. Are there any other questions or?
Yeah, Alex, I have a question. Thanks for being here, first off. And then second, what are your thoughts on the CMA certification versus the CPA certification?
Hey, Amanda. So I know a few people that have the CMA designation. And but honestly, I'm not too familiar with it. I am a big fan of continuous learning, though. So just as my 2 cents to the group is that I think one of the biggest reasons for my success or the way I've been promoted throughout my career is that I've always tried to learn off the clock. So I think anyone that would want to get a designation like that and to get those extra skills and that extra knowledge will pay off many times over. So I haven't really so once I got my CPA license, I didn't really explore any of the other designations or anything like that. But I always have been really interested in taking courses like on LinkedIn Learning. I think that's a great resource. Different books that people have recommended to me over the years, I try to read all the time because I think just continuously, if you learn a little bit every day, I mean, just like interest, it can compound and connections that you might not have made just a few years ago, especially. So my personal experience, so connections 5 years ago, I wouldn't have made. Doing the extra work and taking some additional courses or reading some particular books, I'm now able to comprehend more or make connections faster to make better decisions. So.
What are some of the most valuable skills that you would say that a controller should possess? You know, like leadership, communication. What do you think it would be the best thing for them to work on?
That's a great question. So I think foundationally, you need the technical expertise. You have to be able to know kind of what you're looking at to manage the different transaction cycles. So I definitely think it's not something you could necessarily just jump into directly from school. I think there is kind of a progression there that you would need to go through. But after that, I think time management skills are extremely important. I think communication and setting clear expectations to your staff is extremely important. I think communication is a bunch of different ways, right? So I communicate, you've got to be able to adapt maybe your communication style based on who you're talking to. So like a third party, very formal. But if you're talking to the sales department and you're trying to build rapport with them and develop into a real team, you would have a different communication style with them so I think being able to read people and to be able to adapt your communication style is pretty important as well.
Anybody have any other questions for Alex? Okay. Well, thank you, Alex, so much for your presentation. It was very interesting. And like Rochelle said, if you'll just send me those slides, I will forward those on to her. And if any of the rest of you would like them as well, let me know and I can send you that information because it's very useful when you're trying to find that niche that you want to go into.
Great, sounds good. I appreciate y'all having me. Hopefully I can see you all in person maybe this fall or early next year.
Yeah, hopefully. It
If
looks
anyone
like
has any follow-up questions, they can reach out to me via email if they like, or maybe LinkedIn or something like that.
yeah, awesome.
Great.
Well,
Thanks,
thank
everybody.
you so much.
Okay. Take care.